sites. Now, to move on to the next session, I would wish to introduce our next moderator, architect Samer Helmy from Egypt. He's an architect and urban designer. He works in the field of heritage architecture, documentation and preservation of World Heritage sites and historical buildings. He has an experience in consulting on the management of heritage sites and cities, including World Heritage sites. Together with his team, he won the first prize for planning the North Historic Cairo area. He also participated with UNESCO in preparing the indicative report to assess the current status of the Cairo Heritage Site and its management proposals. He also participated in publishing many books about heritage and historical areas, and he's an active member of the UIA Heritage and Cultural Identity Work Program, as well as the UIA Architecture for All Working Group. He's the Secretary General of the Society of Egyptian Architects and a founding member in the Egyptian National Committee of ICOMOS. Welcome, Architect Samer.
Thank you, Qasim. How are you all? Good afternoon and good morning everywhere. UIA Region 5 is Africa. It's all the continent, and Africa is the heart of the world and its future. Back in 1978, rock-hewn churches of Lepelia in Ethiopia was listed on the World Heritage List as a cultural site. It was the first site heritage listed in Africa. Then after that, 147 sites located in 64 African countries were listed. 63 of them are culture and architecture. Many of the African World Heritage sites are in danger. In this session, our honorable speakers will take us in a tour around the continent, overviewing its wealth of heritage. And our first speaker, our keynote speaker, please welcome Architecture Donatis Kamamba. He will speak about challenges facing the implementation of the World Heritage Convention in Africa over the last 50 years. Architect Kamamba is a retired director of antiquities in the Ministry of Natural Resources and Tourism of the United Republic of Tanzania. Born in 1954, he was educated both within the outside the country, and an architect by profession, who holds a master's degree in conservation studies from University of York, UK, in 1989. Currently a part-time lecturer at the University of Dar es Salaam, College of Engineering and Technology, Department of Engineering, Construction and Technology, and College of Humanities, Department of Archaeology and Heritage Studies. Welcome, Dr. Donatis.
Thank you, Samer. Thank you.
Yeah, good day for everybody and each of us. Thank you very much.
I will share my screen for your presentation now.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you very much. I wanted to take you through the innovative ways, challenges for the safeguarding and the conservation of heritage sites in the next 50 years African perspective. Next, I will take you through 7 areas: introduction, roles and responsibility of the state parties, African state parties' performance for the last 50 years, the context in which the convention is being implemented, next 50 years of resilience, observations, and the conclusions. Next. Yeah, we note here that the General Conference of UNESCO that met in Paris from 17th October to 21st November 1972, 87th century, adopted the 1972 UNESCO Convention on the 16th day of November 1972. Next. The message of that convention was in principle that a loss through deterioration or disappearance of a national heritage constitutes an impoverishment of the heritage of all the peoples of the world. Parts of this heritage, because of their exceptional qualities and values, are considered to be of outstanding universal value, and as such, worthy of special protection by international community against the dangers which increasingly threaten them. Next. Next, the next 50 years with the existence of the convention, while continuing with the convention inscription and the management trans of the heritage, there should be exceptionally necessary and the guided efforts in place to address the African contextual definitions to uphold the desire that African state parties want to see on the list. Next, each state party's primary role, among others, is to ensure the identification, protection, conservation, presentation, and transmission of heritage to the future generations. These measures should integrate the protection of that heritage into a comprehensive planning program and a setup within its territories where such services do not exist. These services may include one or more services for the protection, conservation, and the presentation of the cultural and natural heritage with an appropriate staff and the processing the means to discharge their functions. Here we are actually emphasizing on the appropriate staff and the processing the means to discharge their functions. Another function would be the working modalities for implementation of the convention to improve performance of the continuous should include enhancing capacity of the African young professionals and experts. This is a very important role if we are to transmit our heritage into the future. It is also the duty of the state party to ensure not only that effective and active measures are taken for the protection, conservation, and the presentation of its heritage, but also to adopt a general policy which aims to give heritage a function in the life of the community. This heritage has to have a function in the life of the community. Further responsibilities is one of the major roles of the state party is also to put in place effective protection and management systems that afford sustainability of this heritage without forgetting the role of facilitating an economic growth of cities. Now, we are coming to see what has been the performance over the 50 years briefly. Africa has 47 state parties, which is 24% that are signatory to the convention out of the 1974 total state parties. Notwithstanding the number of state parties to the convention and the African continent's remarkable culture and natural wealth, Africa has remained underrepresented on the UNESCO World Heritage List. This is an area to emphasize. Africa has remained underrepresented on the UNESCO World Heritage List. At the conclusion of the 44th session of the World Heritage Committee, July 2021 in Fuzhou, China, out of the 1,157 properties on the list, only 142 were located in Africa, equivalent to only 12.87% of the total number of properties inscribed on the World Heritage List. Africa in this period of 50 years performance has also recorded eminent, serious, and the potential threats that could have an impact on the outstanding universal value. It's not only we are underrepresented, but also what we have is also in danger. The implementation of the convention is challenged, among others, by ineffective governance, poaching, oil and minerals exploration, armed conflicts, and the development pressures in urban historic towns. These threats have resulted into low performance, not only in terms of quantity, but also in terms of quality management, stakeholders' involvement and the participation, and the gender equality and the youth mobilization. Next, Africa in this period of 50, Africa, the above recorded performance has been achieved in an environment of difficult engagement, of priorities over priorities. This good work recorded performance is inadequate when comparing the number of state parties from Africa continent to other continents, particularly Europe and Asia, as the statistics show as above. Next. The contextual working environment of the state parties to undertake their role is not only made by results of conflicting factors and expectations, but also with the sustainable development priorities. The management of the built heritage, its conservation status, is also challenged by the economic development pressures, governance, natural deterioration factors, and war conflicts in some cases. Next. Other world heritage sites are rich in oil, gas, and the minerals deposits whose exploration conflicts with World Heritage Convention norms. The question of setting priorities limits not only the quality and the quantity of state parties that can implement their responsibilities, but also resources investments into the effective heritage conservation and the management. According to UN publication, according to 24, come back. One slide behind, yes. According to UN publication of 2022, the population of the African region is expected to almost double by 2050 to 2.09 billion, where that of Europe and North America will increase by only 0.4. The annual population growth in Africa is the highest in the world at 2.7%, varying between 0.8 in Lesotho and 3.7 in Niger, against 1.1% at global level for the year 2020. Next, according to World Development Indicator report, nearly 34 million out of 1.3 billion people were unemployed in Africa in 2019. Furthermore, the employment rate was at 6.9%. This was true at the sub-region level as well. In West Africa, for instance, the unemployment rate for women was 6.6% compared to 5.6% for men. The youth unemployment rates for East Africa were the lowest at 6.2% in 2019. In 2010, 63% of young workers lived in poverty in Africa, compared to 51% of others. Next. While Africa is struggling to create employment to her young population, the convention has restrictive guidelines on the developments intended to take place in World Heritage sites or towns. Globally, cities and towns are developing at an unprecedented rate. By 2018, 55% of the world's population was living in the urban area. It is projected that exponential population growth and urbanization of the world will mean that 70% of all humanity will live in cities and the towns by 2050, mostly in sub-Saharan Africa and Asia. Next, the context continues. According to 2018 IFM Development Index, Africa has the highest population in terms of growth rate, with a current population of 1.25 billion, and is likely to double by 2050. Africa ranks at the bottom in GDP per capita, standing at only $1,890 compared to North America, Europe, and America, where the rates are higher. Africa ranks 31. Go back. Yeah, Africa ranks at the bottom in GDP per capita. Next. The infant mortality rate is high in Africa, and at 51 per 1,000 live births in 2017, it was over 6 times higher than that of the European region. Average life expectancy in Africa is the lowest in the world, standing at 61 males for males and 64 for females, compared to Europe, where it is 75 for males and 82 for females, and in North America, where it is 77 for males and 81 for females. In education, 38% African adults, around a million, are illiterate, which 2/3 are women, according to UNESCO. This is far higher than Europe, with a mere 1.8% illiteracy rate. In 2017, the proportion of undernourished people in sub-Saharan Africa was the highest of all regions in the world at 22.7%, about 224 million according to FAO. Next, going on the context. In Africa in 2020, inflation rates ranged from 0.4% in Mali to almost 30% South Sudan. For the year 2022, the Trade Economics website publishes figures for the region, which range from inflation rates of 14% in Benin to 33.5% in Ethiopia, excluding Sudan and Zimbabwe, which have inflation rates of 149% and 285% respectively. The war in Ukraine and the energy and environmental crisis do not offer prospects of an improvement, with the country's economies already strained by conflicts and the COVID-19 crisis. According to the World Bank report 2020, if nothing is done, 9 out of 10 poor people in the world will be Africans. The context continues. In 2000, next. By 2050, demographic changes and rapid urbanization, more than 1.1 billion Africans will live in cities, will occur while Africa is caught in a poverty trap of 160 million urban dwellers living in informal settlements and the slums, nearly a third of the population without access to clean water, sanitation, energy, mobility facilities, and the 200 million young people about to enter the labor market with little hope for finding decent work. Next. Next. The governance of World Heritage Historic Cities or built environment fails from the poverty angle of career on one part and the legal frameworks on another part. Statistics available give a clear picture of struggles that African states are confronted with in valiantly striving towards prioritizing the safeguarding and the conservation of the heritage. Management and the conservation efforts of many African World Heritage, particularly East African World Heritage and the historic cities, are overwhelmed by many physical and anthropological factors. It is evidenced by reading and walking around in such properties that many World Heritage historic cities or built heritage have management systems and structures which are outdated and cannot only deal with current threats facing World Heritage and the historic cities, but also the convention requirements. Next, looking at the population growth rate of the African World Heritage cities, taking for example, of Zanzibar Stone Town, a World Heritage property metro area whose population is 766,000. Now with an expectation of 1,096,000 population in the year 2030, it is evident that the conventional operational guidelines needed to evolve to accommodate limited urban growth to avoid conservation ethics, not to clash with the development priorities and expectations. Heritage needs to support the promotion of higher life expectancy, adult literacy, and the real per capita incomes, and the increased capacity to benefit from the globalization process. In the light of these development needs, heritage conservation planning must focus more on the benefits of heritage for human development. Developing countries must thus adopt a heritage conservation policy with the public benefits. Now, the next 50 years. Next. The next 50 years with the existence of the convention, while continuing with the conventional inscription and the management trends, as stated above, necessary and guided efforts should be exceptionally put in place to address African contextual definitions to uphold the desire that African state parties want to see on the list. If state parties in collaboration with the UNESCO African heritage professionals and the advisory bodies are to navigate this situation, innovations are to be applied by looking into not only the guidelines that guide the management of functional cities, large natural heritage sites and towns that are World Heritage, but also look into the philosophical intention of the convention. Does the convention intention consider the mitigation of the challenges the state parties face, particularly the African state parties to the convention? I would want to conclude by saying heritage and sustainable development is a tool for economic regeneration in world heritage property. This should be our theme for the next 50 years, and see how best we can benefit from the World Heritage Convention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good presentation.
Samer, you are muted.
So sorry. Thank you, Architecture Komomo. Our next speaker is Mr. Jacob from the World Heritage Fund of Africa, and he will speak to us about the work of the fund. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm sharing the screen from this side. Apologies if someone can put down the number of clients. I mean, stop going. Then I can share.
We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
No, Samer is saying you should stop the sharing on your side so that you can share the screen.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much.
Jacob, we can see your screen, but your voice is really, not quite clear.
Sorry. Hello.
The sound quality is not good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's a bit better.
Okay. I will try my best. I'll try to sound. I don't know what happened. My sound here. I'll try my best. Now, apologies from the director of the fund who is traveling, and I was requested to briefly present this on his behalf. My name is Tariq. I'm Senior Program Specialist at African Wildlife Fund. And I'll briefly tell you about the fund and the work we do in the next 10 minutes.
Sorry, the sound quality is very bad.
Yes.
Samer, do you want to help to share the PowerPoint presentation? Maybe it will be better for him.
Unfortunately, I don't have the presentation.
Jacob, do you want to try speaking again?
No, I think if the sharing is done by somebody else, he'll reduce the bandwidth, and I think the quality will be much better.
Yeah. Maybe he can share the PowerPoint presentation with the Secretariat.
Well, let me share it with the Secretariat.
Yeah.
So that they can share on the screen.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, someone needs to share my PowerPoint right from that side so that I don't interfere with the sound.
May I suggest that if we want to save time, we can start with the architecture Tariq and return back to Jacopo. Tariq. Tariq.
Tariq is also frozen.
Yes, it's maybe he's in the airport and his plan is loading. I think we lost him also.
Yeah.
I'll try to contact him.
How about any other speaker can go first? Yeah, Tariq is back.
Yes. Yes.
Samer, Tariq is back. I think
Yes.
Tariq, if you're ready, you can share your screen and proceed.
Okay. Sorry, I am in Jeddah airport. My airplane is boarding now. I'm supposed to start my presentation about 2 weeks ago. So I am starting very quickly. Today I'm talking about
We'll introduce you later.
World Head Site. My name is Tariq Murri. I am architecture consultant specialized in conservation. I graduated from Leuven Center of Raymond Lomer, and I did a lot of work on historic Cairo and several world sites in Saudi Arabia. Now I'll talk about historic Cairo world site. Actually, it was listed on the list 1979. And since that time, we are trying to keep the site as it should be. Actually, this is what we are going to present today. Historic Cairo definition and borders. Problem led to massive intervention. The framework of the historic Cairo project and the mobility and traffic development, the infrastructure and monument and urban conservation. This is a map of the French exhibition. This map drawn is 1805 was the main capital of the Middle East, and as you see, and there was a small river crossing it. It was a channel connecting connecting the Red Sea to the Nile. So we had some few lakes inside the city like this, and the south mosque of Ibn Tulun and the north mosque of Al Hakim, and there was borders of Cairo at that time, and there was a citadel built by Salahuddin in the beginning of the 10th century. These are a few sketches done by travelers and artists visit Cairo in the 18th century. By the end of the 18th century, mobility was started to like this.
Tariq, could you stop sharing and could you stop sharing a share from my computer to have a clear voice, please?
I stopped sharing. I stop share.
Okay. Okay. You keep talking.
I don't see anything. Yes.
Okay.
F5. F5, please. Yes. What is the dash on the top? There is a black shadow on the top. Go back. Back to. Yes. سامر في حاجة سوداء في البرزنتيشن اللي فوق.
خليك بقى اشتغل كده.
شيل اللي فوق خالص معلش. Okay. Then in the 1920, they cut a main street crossing the historic Cairo site to introduce tram for the first time. And there was another street to the north, 1998, and there was an underground tunnel crossing the city, 1999. Next. As written and described in the dossier of historic Cairo, there were 5 main elements of historic Cairo: the main body of Cairo, and the eastern cemetery, and the southern cemetery, and the citadel, and to the north, the area of to show the port of the Nile, and we have the 19th century extent of Cairo, which call it Khedivi extent of Cairo. Next. 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 Next, please. Yes. Actually, there were many problems led to the massive deterioration of Cairo. Immigration, back one, please. Immigration due to ارجع ورا مش لقدام يا سامر. ايوه. We had series of wars since 1948 till 1973, which led for immigration from the Suez Canal to Cairo, and they filled up most of the old city. They were using monument as refugee settlement. Too, there was a grave earthquake, made a lot of destruction, and there was a deterioration of the infrastructure. Next. Actually, the steps of the project were reforming of mobility, monument conservation, and infrastructure upgrading, then urban conservation and documentation and listing of new historic variable buildings. New on the list, I mean. Yes, next. Next, please. This is the main road crossing the city. It was built in the beginning to have the tram inside. We have a lot of markets, artisan and low income markets for next. Next. On the northern society, we have the marketing. Next. Samer.
You have problem in your network. You have problem in the network. You don't receiving the slides.
I see. I see you moving, but there is.
Yes, here I am on the tunnel slide.
This is the tunnel was built in 1998. Actually, it take a lot of traffic outside the city. Underneath, next. Actually, started with a complete survey of all the activities in the old city, with the workshops and the small industries and trades. Next. The main spine of Cairo was situated as the main market of the Middle East in the end of the 15th century. Next. This is the main spine morphological detail. Next. The markets are distributed along the main street, which called Qasaba. Next. So the old buildings were listed. You can find it in black, and what's in brown were not listed buildings. We are suffering of disappearing. We are suffering under the risk of disappear of this structure to be disappeared. Please. Next. Next. Morphological study. Next. Next. Same morphological study. You can see the monument. So the infrastructure was in a very bad situation. As you can see, there was big floods coming from downward. We had studied all the sewage system and the supplying, and most of them were deteriorated through time. Next. Next. We changed all the infrastructure, upgraded it into a modern way. Sorry, I have to leave. My flight is closing the boarding. Samer, you can continue.
Okay, I will continue the slide, the show. Here's we can see.
I'm sorry, but I am late.
Thank you.
Minutes. And my
Thank
time.
you, Tariq. Thank you, Tariq. Thank you. Thank you. There is a lot of destruction on the monuments. It's mostly are built during the Mamluk era. Then there's as a C, it's you can read it. It's a methodology to control different conservation projects, definition of problems and work priority on the level of monuments through detailed risk map, establishing an action conservation plan for each monument, emphasizing the concept of minimum intervention, establishing a reuse plan for the monument according to the social needs in the historic city, upgrading of the human resources skills by providing sustainable retraining plan, create a dialogue with the users of the monument that help to gain their lost trust. This slide shows the problem and the phases of the work and some of the deterioration in the buildings. And then after the project ended, there is another building with deterioration, and you can see after this palace is the Muhammad Ali Palace, the ruler of the first Khedive's ruler of Egypt. It was distorted and then it returned back. Before and after, before, after. And this is some of the activities are going now through the heritage area. And it's only the main Qasaba will be only for pedestrians. And there's another, there's the UNESCO. I think there's a Professor Heidi, after Jacob speak, she will tell us more about that. So I will stop sharing now. Jacob, is this his presentation is ready? So I think we could welcome Professor Heidi Shalaby. She is a professor of urban conservation, Faculty of Engineering, Zagazig University, Egypt. She is also director of the Central Administration for Planning and Technical Affairs in National Organization for Urban Harmony in Egypt. Her main focus is on the preservation of heritage areas and buildings and on the application of green approaches to heritage preservation and management. During her career, Shalaby has participated in many international projects focusing on heritage preservation and urban regeneration across Egypt, like the recent rehabilitation architecture of Hassan Fathi village in Luxor by UNESCO, the preparation of the World Heritage Nomination dossier of Rosetta, various projects in downtown of Cairo. She will talk to us about the efforts of the Egyptian government to preserve and manage heritage sites, a view of the challenge and mechanism to deal with them. Welcome, Professor Heidi.
Good evening, everybody. I would like to thank you so much to give me such a great opportunity to be with you today. And thank you, Engineer Samer and all the organizers for this very lovely meeting. And actually, my talk today, it will be about the efforts for the, did you see my screen? Did you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we said.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Actually, my talk now, it will be about the role of the government organizations in supporting the efforts for the preservation on the World Heritage sites in Egypt. So in Egypt, as you know, of course, that we have seven listed sites on the World Heritage list. 6 of them are listed as a culture sites, and we have only 1 listed in the natural site. And unfortunately, we have 1 of the culture sites is in the dangerous lists. And the one is in the dangerous list, it's Abu Mina, and it's remains for the city from the period of the Ptolemaic period and the Greece period, the first of the empire of the Romans. And the other one is the ancient Tiba, and it's necropolis in the south of Egypt. And also the historic Cairo that my colleague Dr. Tariq and Engineer Samer mentioned it from a few minutes, and I will speak more about this site. And of course, the pyramid of Giza and Ashur, and the Nubian monuments and Abu Simbel from Abu Simbel to Fela. And in the east, we have the St. Catherine area. And the only natural heritage site that's listed in the World Heritage List is Wadi El Hidan Valley. So about the historic Cairo, the historic Cairo has been listed from 1979, and it has an examples of architecture and urban heritage, the magnificent samples of the architecture from different eras. And like as you see, we have many buildings from the different eras in the from the start of the building of the city, the Fatimid المعزلدين اللي هي المعزلدين اللي start to build the city until now. It's more than 960 years. So all over this time, this city was rule a very important place in the heart of Cairo as a place of the ruler. So we found in the historic Cairo that we have many kinds or many examples of the mosques with different, show the different era and the different architecture style. I have a problem with my presentation, so I think that may I stop sharing and share it again. Like what you see here, we have many different architecture style of the mosques and the surrounding and another different buildings that's still until now, that's still usable until now. And also what is very famous about the historic Cairo, that it's an example of an original urban pattern that's still livable. So this is some photos from Al-Mu'azz-el-Din al-Fatimi Street, and this is the main kasaba in historic Cairo, and it's still the heart of the commercial area in historic Cairo. And also this street or this area, it's not only a monument that has been listed in the national or international list, but it's also have a lot of events and international events, like what we have in the dancing festival, the traditional dancing festival, or the traditional costumes festival that has been done in the international, actually in the international range in the inside the historic city. Actually, in Egypt, we did a very too much effort to conserve this area and to keep it as much as we can at the original pattern. And this has happened by doing a lot of effort and a lot of project in the infrastructure, and also in the preservation of the monuments, like what you see. And also, what is the most important thing about this this area is it's still livable. So we can see a lot of people are still working and are still living in the city. So it's a livable city until now, and they are always being in the original fabric of the city. So whatever the extension of the city has been done, or the urban project has been done next to this area, or the extension of urban settlements, the another urban settlements, but actually the historic Cairo preserves on this urban fabric area too much. And about the listing of the historic Cairo, so from 1979 until now, the historic Cairo was listed as the first under the name of Islamic Cairo, and then it's changed the name, or we changed the name of the file when we support the when we submit the maps of this area. As Engineer Tariq mentioned from a few minutes, is that we have main 5 areas to this area, and plus to the buffer zone of the area. About the role of the National Organization for Urban Harmony and the Ministry of Antiquities to keep or to preserve the urban pattern of this area. So we have 2 main parties in Egypt are dealing with this area. the Ministry of Antiquities or the Higher Council of Antiquities that put the foundation or the criteria to preservation the archaeological building with all the methods of its restoration, and also the buffer zone around the monument building, listed building. And in the other way, the National Organization for Urban Harmony, and which is working to under the umbrella of the Ministry of Culture, are putting or put some criteria to preserve the surrounding urban context of the urban fabric around the monuments. So we have two layers of the preservation in this historic area or in this heritage area. One by the monuments itself, and it's very, very highly preserved from the Ministry of Antiquities. And the other layer of the preservation, it's about the regulation that are dealing with the urban areas surrounding this context or surrounding these buildings. And about the National Organization for Urban Harmony that was established from 2001 and start working in the listing of urban heritage areas in Cairo and also outside Cairo, and plus it had an archive of all the listing heritage buildings in Cairo, and plus to that we have the archive for the heritage gardens in Egypt also. Of course, we have a lot of list of laws that are dealing with heritage areas, especially the historic Cairo. But actually, the historic Cairo it's very important in the national level also, and it is listed as a heritage area in the national level. And also in this level, we have two levels of preservation. We have the core, as you see in the brown, the core city or the core area for the historic Cairo, and the surrounding like a buffer zone. But it's we say that's in the grade C of the listing. Inside these boundaries, we have a list of regulation that are dealing with the urban context in this area, and actually it's dealing with the urban development surrounding the monuments, as I said before, and also it's dealing with the new buildings that are must be built or have to be built inside the area or around the area in the level C or level B. So inside the historic area, in the national level, we have more than 622 listed heritage buildings inside this area, and also they are very well documented, and we have a very good archive about these monuments. And also we have 520 archaeological building, and it's listed also, and it's documented by the Ministry of Antiquities. And all of these buildings that anyone want to do anything inside this area or in one of the buildings in this area, he must to take a permission first. He must to submit all the project that he want to intend to do it, and he has to follow the list of regulation that has been put to preserve the building and also the area and the urban fabric in this area, which is very, very valuable for us. All of this data has been put in the GIS database, so we have all the details about every building in the GIS database that it must be help us to take a decision about any project in or surround this area. Now let me please give you some examples about the other project in the modern heritage area. And this is the Khedive Cairo, and the Khedive Cairo is the has been built from the 19th century, and it's the next heritage area to the historic area of Cairo. And it's also are listed in our national heritage areas as a heritage area. And actually, in the Khedive Cairo, we have more than 750 building as a heritage building. And in this area, actually, we are dealing with the new heritage building that are maybe between 100 and 150 years old. And this is some example about the building that has been restored from the facades. And also all of this project has been done with the National Fund between many ministries in Egypt. And we are not only working in the heritage listed building in this area, but as you see, we are working in all the street. When we start working in one of these street of the downtown of Cairo. And the aim of the project is to revitalize the Khedive Cairo and to preserve it again. So we are in this project, we are working to remove all the addition and professional addition that has been put in or added to the building during the time. And we did a very particular restoration for all the architecture details on the facades and everything that has been done as the original version of the building. Actually, and also this is some of the examples of the work that we are done. And also we continue to tell the people how much valuable the building that they are living in or dealing with. And actually, we are removing the additions of the stores down in the floor in the ground floor of the building. We remove all the decorations and the additions to the building and keep it to be as original as much as we can to the original drawings of the building with all the important details that was in the buildings before. And actually, if I have 5 minutes more, few minutes, I can take you through another example, and it's outside Egypt, but it's very important, I think, nowadays, because it's also in another.
Unfortunately, you are behind schedule.
Okay, maybe
okay.
Next. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you so
You are
much.
welcome. Okay.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you. Our next speaker is Associate Professor Herman Kiriama. Herman Kiriama trained in archaeology and heritage management at the University of Cambridge, UK, and Deakin University, Australia, respectively. He has held several academic and professional posts, including being head of coastal archaeology at the National Museum of Kenya, program officer at ICROM in Rome, coordinator of Improvable Heritage at the Center of Heritage Development in Africa, head of projects at the Australian Cultural Heritage Management in Melbourne, Australia, and visiting professor in Peking University in China, among many other responsibilities. Currently, Herman is an associate professor of heritage studies and director of the Heritage Studies Research in Research Center at Kisii University, Kenya. He has collaborated with a number of international heritage institutions, and he is a co-direct editor of widely used book Environment Impact Assessment in Africa. He is also the founding editor of the African Journal of Heritage Studies, as well as editor of the East African Journal of Historical and Social Science Research. Professor Herman will speak to us about the sustainable development of World Heritage Sites in Kenya and the case study of Miji, Kenda, Kayas. Welcome, Professor Herman Kiriama.
Thank you very much, Chair. I hope everybody can hear me. Can you do my slides or I can do it from here? Can you share my slides for me, please?
Just a minute. Yes. Note. I think there's something here wrong with me. Could you share it from your side, please?
Let me see whether it can come.
Because I'm
Okay, can you everybody see that?
yes, we see it.
Okay, yeah, I'm talking about the Kenda Kayas, and the Kenda Kayas are the sacred forests which are found in on the coast of Kenya. There are 4 of them, and they cover an area of around 200 kilometers from the south, the coast of Kenya, from the south to the north. When I say from the south they border Tanzania, and in the north they are next to Lamu, and Lamu borders Somali. Initially, around the 16th century, when they were first occupied, these sites were fortified villages. In other words, there were villages which had been established on top of mountains to protect the community from raids, which were at that time carried out by the pastoral communities whom they found in the area. But later on, when there was pacification around the 1940s and people became many, they started moving out of the forests, these fortified villages, and they started occupying the surrounding areas. So because as a result of that, these initial villages became sacred places, because they were places where their ancestors have been buried, and also they became places where they could go to offer sacrifices and prayers when there were calamities in the community. In 2008, 11 of these sites were inscribed on the World Heritage List, and they are known as the Sacred Kenda Forests. And the main basis of their description is that they have this unique testimony of a cultural tradition which has a direct link to the living communities. I'm sorry, the map is not very clear, but you can see the picture. That's how they are. They're essentially a forest, but then a forest with a lot of intangible heritage, which makes that forest to be sacred. As a result of this sacredness, the community put in place rules and regulations that govern the forests. For example, it is a taboo for one to cut a tree in the forest, and also that one cannot enter into this forest if certain parts of the forest, not every part, but certain part of the forest, if you are not an ordained elder. You must be ordained in order for you to enter into that. And for you to be ordained as a Kaya elder, it is believed that the ancestors have to choose you, so that somebody, for example, gets into a trance, or somebody becomes sick, and when they inquire what's the reason of the sickness, then they are told that this person needs to be ordained as a Kaya elder. And they said that once somebody has been ordained, then they become okay. So, and then previously and even now, there are particular paths and gates which lead into the Kayas, so that somebody does not just walk anyhow into the Kayas, so that because it's a forest, you can enter it anyhow. You have to use the defined gates and paths for you to enter into the forest. Or else it is believed that if that doesn't happen, if you don't do that, something bad may happen to you. So as in the past, Still, the kayas are used for various ceremonies, as I've already said, that when there is a lack of rain, like now in Kenya, we are missing rain. I'm sure shortly people will go to the kayas to pray for rain. Or when you are asking for good harvest, the people go to the kayas. Or when there is a general malady or general problems in the community, people go to the kayas, and the sacrifices and prayers are led by these ordained elders. And it's these elders who are in charge of the enforcement of the rules and taboos, and are the ones who will levy and sanction or fine upon anybody who has gone against the rules. And because of these rules, it has enabled both the physical and the natural environment of the kaya to be protected. There's, in fact, if you go to the coastal areas where they are found, you'll find that the surrounding areas, the trees have been cut, they're devoid of forest. But then the kayas have remained as islands of pristine forest. And they are basically the former equatorial forest, which spread all the way from the equatorial Congo to southern Mozambique. So they are the only example of this equatorial forest which is found in the coast. And they have been protected because of this the sacredness and because of the rules and taboos which have been put in place. Then, because of that, now most of the Kenda communities, and Kenda means 9 tribes, there are 9 villages. There are 9 villages who claim ancestry from the same place, somewhere in the northern Kenya coast and southern Somalia coast. So, and because they believe they are coming from one ancestor, that's why they're known as Kenda. There are 9 of them. So then that they have the same traditions and the same beliefs, the same culture. And in all the 9 subgroupings, they have the council of elders who are the custodians of the culture of the kayas. And of late, politicians have taken advantage of that. You find them running to the kaya elders for blessings when they want to become or to vie for posts, like to become a governor, become a member of parliament, and so on. But then what has happened that because of this sacredness of the kayas, there has been that for some time, people didn't want anything untoward to be done in the kayas. But of course, times are becoming hard, and like the young generation, the people are growing up now, they don't bother about traditions and whatever. So they didn't see what is the profit of having such pristine forests with very good trees, which can be used to build good houses and which can be sold and get income. So slowly, the youth especially had started cutting trees and leading to the destruction of most of these kayas. And then because of that, we started to think about ways that can sustain the kayas, can make the kayas to be sustainable as a cultural place, but at the same time to sustain the local communities. That's then this project of looking at the Rabbi kayas started. The Rabbi kayas are a part of the 9, the rabbis, let me say that the rabbis are part of the 9 communities which make the Kenda. And the rabbis have got 4 kayas, which they go and carry out their cultural practices. And these kayas cover 756 hectares, and they have got 405 plant taxes. 8 are endemic to the Rabbi, 9 are variable to Kenya coast, and 11 are typical to Kenya. So that the objective of this project, as I've already said, was to ensure that the Rabbi kayas have been conserved, and the conservation was to ensure that there's a promotion, there's a revival in the interest of the sites, as the center of culture, history, and the biodiversity. I've already alluded to the fact that the young generation did not see the importance of keeping the kayas because they were not reaping any benefit from them. The elders tell them, you should not do this, you should not do that, but then they didn't see any tangible benefit coming from the kayas, and they started destroying them. So the program was to ensure that these youth have been interested in knowing, have been made to get interest in knowing the objectives behind the conservation of the kayas. Why have the elders left the kayas to be the way they are up to now? Why are the elders so adamant in trying to protect the kayas? So also, they were to be taught about the biodiversity of the kayas and to know that a healthy kaya is also healthier for the entire community. The second one was then also to see how we can use sustainably the kayas by having programs that can generate income for the inhabitants, but at the same time, they do not, those programs do not destroy the kayas. So then, in other words, there are 4 things we wanted to do to ensure that there's environmental sustainability, that the kayas are sustained the way they are. There is inclusive social development, that everybody in the community is included, inclusive economic development, and also promotion of site governance and its immediate surroundings. So how do we do environmental sustainability? We try to achieve this by establishing woodlots, and in these woodlots, we add indigenous as well as exotic plants. And the woodlots were established in those areas around the kayas, which had been destroyed. I said that the youth had started destroying the kayas. So what we did is that in order to protect the entire kaya from being destroyed, we established woodlots along the edges where the kayas had been destroyed. And this woodlot was a resource to the local community. Most of the people they still use wood for fuel and also for building. And for especially the women, to get wood fuel, they had to go inside the kayas, and in the process, they also destroyed the kayas. So we ensured that instead of them going to the actual kaya, now they get the wood they want from the woodlots. If somebody wants timber or any tree for building, they also got that from the woodlots. So this woodlot then ensured that the site is protected, no trees are cut inside the site itself. To feed in the woodlots, we established a seedling nursery, and this is the one which we use, where we were getting the seedlings to plant in the woodlots. And then at the same time, some of the seedlings were sold to the members of local community, and even people from afar come to buy. So then that the woodlots, the nursery was an income generating project, because you sell the seedlings, you make money, and also the nursery supplies the woodlot. And because we ensured that most of these seedlings are indigenous trees, it rejuvenated some of the species that had become extinct as a result of the cutting, which had been cut before. So then that again, now the biodiversity, in a sense, we are rejuvenating the biodiversity of the area by ensuring that the woodlot, the plants which have been destroyed before have been replanted back. To achieve social inclusion, we put in place special strategies. For example, we ensured that a committee, which is composed of elders, two women groups and 2 youth groups, was established. Initially, it's only the elders who are in charge of running the kayas, but now we talked to them and they agreed that for this project to be sustainable, we needed to include the youth and the women. Why the 2 groups? The women are the ones mostly who are going into the kayas to cut trees for fuel. And as I said, the youth are the ones who are cutting trees to sell. And also sometimes they will go and harvest sand from the kayas for sale, building sand. So then that if these groups who initially felt that they did not identify themselves with the Kayas, if they were included, then they will identify with the site and they will preserve the sites. Then we started income generating projects. The ones I'll talk about them shortly. And these projects will include beekeeping, ecotourism, and the seedling nursery, which I've talked about. The youth and the women were taught methods of beekeeping, how to keep the keys, how to harvest honey, how to process the honey, and how to sell it. The youth and the elders were taught as tour guides. They were given lessons on how to work as tour guides, and then they started taking visitors around the site. And then the three of them, the three groups, were also involved in the management of the nursery. In other words, that members from each of the three groups were chosen to take charge of the nursery. The income which was gotten from these activities are used for buying medical supplies for the local dispensary. They give scholarships to private but need students from the community. They pay teachers at the local primary schools, and also they provide clean drinking water for the community. So in essence, then, that even the other members of the community who are not involved, because they see the benefits coming from the Kayas, they have embraced the need of conserving the Kayas. And in socioeconomic inclusion, what we have done is that we have ensured that both the youth and the women who work in this project are paid monthly wages. So that those who are working on the beekeeping and those who are working as ecotourism and those working at the seedlings, they're paid monthly wages. And then also what we have done, that we have not restricted the beekeeping to the forest itself, but community members have also been taught and encouraged to start beekeeping projects outside the site, around their homes. And also when they do, they sell the honey they harvest, they sell it to the committee, and then the committee sells it to other people. So then that the local community also feels that they're part and parcel of the Kaya. The community has also been encouraged to start making souvenirs, which they sell to the visitors. There's a resource center which was built nearby. So then what has happened is that the local community is now, which previously was not earning anything from the Kayas, is earning some income from the Kayas, and now they feel that the Kayas are part and parcel of them, and they feel there's a reason why the Kayas should be protected, because they can see tangible benefits which is coming from them. And to promote governance of the site and the surrounding community is that the elders have been mandated now to take care of the site and to ensure that all the rules and regulations, though they did this before, but now they have been given more impetus that they do that. And if there is somebody who has done anything wrong in the site, instead of just using the traditional governance mechanism of punishing this person, they can also report them to the central government. The central government in the local areas represented by a chief, so they can report this person to the chief. And if the mistake committed or the crime committed is so severe, this person can be taken to the police and then taken to court. And what has happened is that the council is now working closely with the National Museums of Kenya, which is in charge of all World Heritage sites in the Republic of Kenya, to ensure that this site is properly taken care of. So then that if there is anything which can be done, which maybe is against the regulations of a listed World Heritage site, the National Museum advises that, and the Council of Elders make sure that that is taken care of. Then the management committee, which comprises the youth, the elders, and the women, they have an annual meeting with the entire Rabbi community. All members of the community come to this annual general meeting where they are given a report, both financial and financial report on what has happened and any other issues that have come up as a result of the management of the kayas, so then that the community can question how the funds have been spent and any other projects that they want to be started or any things that they want to be taken into account. So then that as a result of this, what I can say is that we have what we can call sustainable heritage management, in the sense that the site is now sustainably managed, in the sense that trees are not cut, sand is not harvested, and the pristine nature of the kayas is being preserved, and then the cultural aspects of the kayas are also being respected, so that the kayas are now become healthy, and the community is also sustainably benefiting from the kayas because they are earning income, which has assisted individual households to have increased income, which they use to meet their day-to-day expenses. And of course, again, the needy students also benefit from the kayas. So what this project has done is that it has brought a win-win situation for both the community and the kaya. The kaya is protected and the community is also protected in the sense that now they have got an increased income, which they can use for their day-to-day activities. I think I'll stop there. That is, I think I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you, Architecture Herman. I think we, due to lack of French, lack of French translation, we will not have Professor Franco go with us, so we can start our question part. There's a question from Jamil from Tunisia. He's asking about how to for rich heritage architecture in Tunisia that concern purpose. Thank you. He asking about how to list the social habitat sites. I think if Professor Turner here, he could answer this question. Professor Heidi, could you answer this question, please?
Yes, actually, I can speak about our experience when we are dealing with the heritage area in Egypt. If we are working in the history. So actually,
your voice problem in your voice.
We don't make any. Did you hear me now? I hear you very good.
Yes.
Did you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
I said that we didn't make any success in Cairo without the community engagement. For example, in the Khedive Cairo, we make the union between the owners of the shops in the main streets in the downtown of Cairo, and we lead them to make the maintenance and the cleaning of the area that they are working in. And this is directly after we finish the intervention of the restoration project. And actually, after 2 or 3 years, when we are evaluating this experience, we found that the areas that the residents or the owners of the shop taking care with it, with the union between them, it's more successful and more sustained, more than the other areas that the government only taking care with it. So actually, it's from our experience that the community they have more abilities to take care or sustain the conservation project, especially after the governors finish the project and leave their hands from the area.
Thank you.
Thank you, Herman.
Yeah. Do we have other questions? Maybe from our panelists? Joe, I think we could conclude this session now. We thank all our speakers, and we conclude that it's a long and ongoing work in the heritage of Africa, because as Professor Kamamba said, that Africa has a lot of World Heritage sites and a lot of work, and some of them because of the province or wars and political problems are in dangers, and we are trying to keep them. And we have some examples that Professor Heidi told us about all the heritage, like the historical Cairo, and the modern heritage like the Khedive Cairo. Also, it was a great experience and a great knowledge to know from Professor Herman that about the Kaya, preserving the Kaya area in Kenya, and we are facing now. We lost our two of our precious speakers. Mr. Jacopo, who's was going to talk to us about the World Heritage Fund in Africa, and Tariq, who was going to catch his plane. We are very sorry for that, and tomorrow we'll see you again. Qasim, could you conclude the day? Qasim.
Thank you, Samer, for such a wonderful moderation of the session, plus also the other moderator, Malla, for expertly guiding us through the first session. Thank you also to all our presenters that have been with us all through. We've really had a wide variety of presentations, giving an overview of World Heritage sites, from urban sites all the way to natural sites such as the Kaya. We actually, as Samer has just said, we've had actually a demonstration of the kind of challenges that indeed the world is facing, from one of our presenters, Professor Gulis, who gave us a rundown of what is happening in Turkey, but also at the same time, one of our speakers, Dr. Sibongile Masuku, who was supposed to be on this session, was not able to join us because the area she's in has really been cut off in South Africa because of floods and heavy load shedding in terms of electricity, and so could not be able to join us on this session. However, all the papers that were to be presented will be in our conference report and will be online on the UIA website, and will be there for all of us to be able to actually study them and actually learn from the lessons that others are able to generate from managing the issues that they have on their sites. Tomorrow, we'll have another session starting off at 13 hours Paris time, and it will start with region 4 and end with region 3 in the afternoon. So we encourage all of you again to join us, hopefully for another enlightening session from these two regions of the world. Meanwhile, I would wish to invite the Secretary General to have a few words before you conclude today's session. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to say something on the name of the International Union of Architects. I want to congratulate all the co-directors, all the moderators, Maria and Samer, and all the speakers. These have been wonderful lectures, all of them. You know, it's very important. I hope more people around the world could understand the importance of heritage, and you are a good leaders. So keep going on. Thank you very much.
Kasim, I think the president has said it all. So it has been a very interesting sessions. We'd like to thank all the presenters for sharing your valuable experience. So we look forward to all of you joining us again tomorrow for the last session. Yeah.
Thank you.
So have a good day. Bye-bye to everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Have a nice
Thank you
evening.
so much.
Thank you, Samer.
bye-bye.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Kasim, thank
Thank
you,
you.
Maria. Thank you,
Thank you.
Oli. Thank
See you.
Herman. Thank you, Heidi.
See you tomorrow. Thank you so
Everybody.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.